Dawn seeped slowly over the black basalt spires of Dragonstone, staining the sky in bruised violets and ash rose pinks that reminded Jon Snow of the first light after the long night. The sea below the fortress muttered in its sleep, restless, churning against jagged fangs of rock, and carrying the taste of distant storms through an arrow-slit window. Jon stood at that slit, shoulders wrapped in a plain northern cloak, despite the gentler spring pressing warm against the stones, habit keeping him there, watching the horizon for threats that never tired even when he did. Behind him the hearth crackled, throwing soft gold over carved stone. A quieter sound wove with the fire's hiss, the sigh of an infant just beginning to learn the world's rhythm. Each exhale was as soft as drifting snow, every inhale a promise of life. Daenerys lay upon the wide bed, propped on pillows, silver gold hair unbound. Linen gown slipped from one shoulder as she nursed the child they had not yet dared to name. Candle flame danced over the tiny fist pressed against her breast. For a breath, Jon thought nothing in any prophecy had ever solved the riddle of that sight. He left the sea to its watch. His boots were silent on the rugs Tyrion had hauled from storerooms to soften the nursery's cold floor. The chamber, once an antechamber for grim dragon banners, felt suddenly smaller than a peasant cottage. Jon knelt at the bedside, one calloused hand brushing a curl from the infant's brow. The hair there was dark as his own, yet a shimmer of silver threaded the roots. Wolf and dragon wrestling already in a single strand. "She knows you," Daenerys whispered. Her voice cracked from nights of wakefulness even queens cannot escape. "Ay," Jon answered, near soundless. "Or she knows my heartbeat. I carried her through war." Pressed close to yours. The corner of Daenerys' mouth curved, pride slid beneath exhaustion. She rested her cheek atop the baby's downy crown, as though sharing dreams no courtier could overhear. Jon's gaze flicked toward the oak door. Two unsullied guarded the threshold, chosen for silence. Yet secrets flow through stone passages like damp. "We should speak of a name," he ventured. "Not yet," she replied, shaking her head. "A name binds. A name announces. Let her live unseen while we can afford it. Kings and queens may hide for a time, heirs cannot." He had argued this point before. The night ice rattled shutters, and she confessed her fear of lords eager to turn a swaddled infant into a sword. He had yielded because he understood fear, and because he loved her even after the truth of his own birth unraveled the world he knew. Yet withholding a name felt like leaving a blade in its scabbard. "The realm guesses already," he said, keeping his voice a thread. "Tyrion sees everything. Scribes have quick tongues. Tyrion is loyal." Her lashes quivered. "And Varys is ashes." The memory of betrayal still burned behind her eyes. "The ravens we keep are ours." Jon drew a breath thick with brine. "Still, this child will weigh on every choice once we sail for King's Landing." Daenerys straightened though she remained half reclined. Her free hand squeezed his forearm. "When we sail, not if. I will not surrender the city to fear, but I will not burn it with our daughter in my arms." Jon heard lightning in the promise. "We take it stone by stone," he agreed, "and leave innocence unscorched." Both heard the unspoken warning that dragonfire is hard to leash, that love and wrath share the same flame. The babe's suckling slowed, eyelids fluttered shut until she released the breast and sagged against Daenerys in luxurious exhaustion. Jon gathered her gently, lifting the tiny weight to his chest. Even through leather and wool he felt her warmth, a brand new furnace of life. Pacing to the window, he rocked her with an instinct older than language. The sea flushed wine red where dawn struck it full. A shape pivoted between clouds, the dark silhouette of Drogon patrolling. Rhaegal followed in lazy loops. "I wonder if they sense her," he murmured. "Drogon watched from the tower during her birth," Daenerys said, adjusting her gown. "He growled each time I screamed. The midwives fled. I almost let him burn the maester." She smiled to show jest, though Jon suspected she only half lied. "If dragons guard her, even the stars may keep their distance." Jon unlatched the window, letting a ribbon of morning air enter. The child twitched, soothed by the surf's hush. "Stark women name their babes by the hearth," he mused. "Targaryens brand theirs in smoke. Let us name her in both, Daenerys answered after a moment. But, later. She stood, wavering a heartbeat, before steadying herself in defiance of bruised muscles. She traced a fingertip along the baby's cheek. I want to feel earth beneath my feet before we choose her fate. Measured footsteps echoed in the corridor, followed by a polite knock. Tyrion entered, bowing out of habit, though curiosity darted across his face. You are awake early, he observed. Early? Jon snorted. We have not slept. None of us will. Tyrion sighed. Until certain small lungs learn the difference between war horns and midnight hunger. He peered into the blankets and smiled despite himself. Formidable, he concluded. Her jaw is pure north. And dragonfire in her eyes, Daenerys added. Then may the world tremble quietly, Tyrion said, though his smile held sorrow. Cersei answered our peace envoy with a spike and 2 heads. The riverlands swarm with Lannister scorpions. We must depart within the fortnight. Supplies are loaded. The Golden Company waits behind the city gates like hounds. Then? Jon stiffened. How many civilians? Too many, Tyrion admitted. King's Landing thrives on bodies packed tighter than grain in a silos. Emptying them would trumpet our intentions. Daenerys hugged the infant closer. Then we conquer swiftly, or we do not conquer at all. No child, queen or pauper, deserves flame. Jon prayed the vow would hold when arrows flew. Stagger the fleet, he said. Dragons guard the rear. The child stays aboard until the Red Keep falls. Tyrion inclined his head. I'll see that the queen's cabin is doubly guarded and windows boarded against stray arrows. Jon heard himself framed as father yet not king. Blood whispered. He was Aegon. He pushed the thought away. The infant stirred as if sensing tension. Grey Worm appeared next, helmet tucked under one arm. Unsullied stand ready for inspection. Also a skiff under the Onion Knight's flag approaches. Sir Davos, Jon explained. With northern volunteers. They are welcome. Daenerys replied, voice so gentle Grey Worm blinked in surprise. Every sword steadies mine. Grey Worm bowed out. Tyrion produced a parchment. Lady Sansa writes. She asks under whose banner she should rally grain. Direwolf or 3-headed dragon. Jon accepted but did not break the seal. I will answer. Tyrion left, shadows trailing him. Jon read Sansa's neat script. Taxes, rumors, the shortage of maesters. Arya riding south with Wintertown archers. The letter closed on a single line. The people follow names they trust. Which shall it be? He folded the page. Sooner than later I must choose. Daenerys studied him. She had tried to name him Warden of the North. He had refused titles beyond what battle granted. Father blurred lines anew. When the crown is ours, we answer together, she said. But the North is your bone. And the dragon in me? That belongs to us both. She rose on bare feet and kissed him softly. The baby hiccuped. Jon laughed under his breath. He found a parcel Missandei had left. Tiny blue mittens knitted by Gilly. He slipped them over the baby's fists. They sagged comically. Shall grow into them, Daenerys said. Into all of it? Jon murmured. Stark wool, Targaryen flame. Harbor bells tolled. Tides turn. Sails bobbed like ghost teeth in the gray. Jon lingered over the sight, then turned. Rest while you can. I'll walk the battlements. Jon. She stopped him with his name alone. If I falter, if the fire blinds me, remind me of this sunrise. You won't falter. We all do, even dragons. Her hand caught his. Their foreheads met. Promise. I promise. And he kissed his daughter's crown. He stepped into corridors smelling of pitch and salt. Armored men clattered past. An eager squire saluted. Jon nodded and climbed an outer stair until wind slapped him awake. Courtyard thrummed. Barrels rolled. Sails mended. Sellswards quarreled. Gendry strode by carrying a spear tip of dragon glass. Ravens circled like omens. At the ramparts, Rhaegal perched on a gargoyle, green wings tucked. Jon offered a gloved hand. The dragon's rumble vibrated stone. He closed his eyes, picturing the nameless infant below. Could he cradle crown and child without dropping one? Footsteps. Davos appeared, cloak whipping. Storms brewing east. Good cover if we move sudden. We sail at dusk. Jon replied. And the little queen? Hidden. For now. Secrets breed rumors, but better rumors than arrows, Davos warned. Jon's chuckle lacked mirth. Let the truth carve itself beneath the red keep. Davos gripped his shoulder and left. Winds howled. Far south lay a city Jon had dreamed of and feared. Somewhere within Cersei plotted. He descended. He found Samwell in the rookery. Sleeves ink-stained. Sam looked up. A treatise on Targaryen gestational lineage, he confessed. Fascinating overlaps. Jon hugged him. Save it for Old Town. How is Gilly? Big as a harvest moon. She sends knitted caps. Another parcel changed hands. Thank her. Keep the secret. Sam nodded solemnly. Jon threaded bustling corridors back toward the nursery but paused, unwilling to disturb the fragile quiet he imagined within. Instead, he entered the council chamber. Maps sprawled across oak. Tyrion and Missandei shifted ivory markers. Stormlight slanted through embrasures. 73 ships seaworthy, Tyrion said. Euron commands more but scatters them along Blackwater Bay, afraid of dragons. Best hope is storm cover. We strike at dusk, Jon affirmed. Rhaegal and Drogon torch the scorpions. Unsullied land first east of the Mudgate, northerners after. Your own men will want you at the fore, Tyrion noted. I will be, Jon said. Though the words tasted hollow. He saw again his daughter's tufted curls. Could a father lead the first charge? Missandei placed a slender hand on the map. Queen Daenerys will ride Drogon. She will, Jon confirmed. But not beyond the breakwater until the walls weaken. Tyrion's brow furrowed. Love and wrath are twin dragons tugging one leash. If I fall, remind her, Jon said quietly. Missandei's eyes flashed. You must not fall. I'll try not to. He forced a smile. They bent once more over weather, wind angles, whispered rumors of wildfire beneath the city. Plans felt solid yet fragile. Parchments against a storm. By afternoon, clouds boiled black over the horizon. Jon slipped from council, returning to the nursery. The hearth had gone to embers. Shadows shimmered. Daenerys slept in a chair. Babe curled against her. Light through the slit painted them molten gold. Jon's chest constricted. He crouched, brushing silver strands from Daenerys' brow. She didn't wake. He watched the small rise and fall of the baby's back. Tiny ribs, steady breath. Thunder rumbled like distant drums. Nightfall would bring departure. He rose, kissing mother and child, and stepped back into hallways alive with clamor. His sword waited in the armory, freshly honed. He touched the pommel, feeling vows whispered beneath Winterfell's weirwood. Defend the living, keep promises even when they bleed. Every stride echoed now with 2 heartbeats, his and the tiny life he would carry into every storm. Outside, rain began to patter. Bells tolled again, deeper, urgent. Sailors hauled rope. Soldiers tightened belts. Dragons wheeled overhead, shadows sweeping the walls like omens. War called them south. Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, pulled his cloak closer and descended into the heart of Dragonstone, where the future slept unaware in a cradle of fire and snow. In Davos, the storm announced itself with a distant growl that rolled through Dragonstone's deep bones long before rain began. Jon heard it while strapping leather greaves over hose still damp from the sea mist that had lingered since dawn. Outside, the courtyard dissolved beneath sudden sheets of water, banners snapping as if trying to wrench free of their poles. Each gust lashed the castle in 1,000 invisible whips, rattling shutters, flinging grit against tower windows. The dragons answered in low, throaty bellows that vibrated rafters and ribs alike. Rhaegal leapt from the western parapet, wings carving air in slow, sweeping beats. Circling the highest tower where Drogon crouched like a black flame waiting to break loose. Inside those walls, sailors in Unsullied hurried beneath hoods and tattered awnings. guiding wagons stacked with barrels of hardtack, and dried cod toward ramps that sloped to the harbor. Davos bellowed orders, soggy parchment cupped in his one good hand, the other flapping earnestly. Lanterns glittered where the rain blurred them, scattering shards of light across the flooded cobbles. Jon waded through the commotion, cloak pressed to his neck, and ducked beneath the covered walkway that led to the smithy. Gendry stood over the anvil, hammer singing despite the weather, sparks spraying across damp stones only to hiss like snakes against the puddles. A half-shaped spearhead glowed white in the forge's throat. Gendry glanced up, sweat and rain mingling on his brow. "Storm's a bastard," he muttered, driving the hammer home. "But the iron's happier for it. Heat fights the cold the gods keep sending." Jon nodded, watching the metal flatten beneath each blow. "How many more?" 87 scorpion bolts left to tip and balance," Gendry said. "If the seas don't drown us first, you'll have them before dusk." "And sea. Good." Jon leaned a shoulder against the stone arch, eyeing bolts stacked like murderous saplings beside the door. "These may decide how many of my men walk back through Dragonstone's gate." Gendry stopped long enough to wipe an arm across his brow. "Those men ride dragon snow. They'll manage. We all bleed the same when iron finds flesh." Jon pushed away. "Send word when you're done." He turned into corridors swimming in torchlit water, where echoes of distant thunder tangled with the clang of hammers and the clop of mule hooves. Somewhere below, a lullaby surfaced above the din, so faint he might have mistaken it for wind in the arrow slits, until the melody resolved into Missandei's lilting voice. He followed the sound down spiraling stairs, past tapestries sagging with dampness, until he found the small chamber Daenerys had claimed for nursing during the final hours before departure. Candles trembled on the sill, their flames bowing to each gust that slipped through the shutters. Missandei sat cross-legged on a cushion, humming a song of Eneth, her voice as soft as silk dragged across sand. The child lay in her lap, wide-eyed, fists drumming the air in time with the beat of the storm. Daenerys hovered at the hearth, stretching a cloak before the fire to warm it. She turned when Jon entered, strands of hair plastered to her cheeks. Her smile was thin but steady. "She grows restless in the noise," Daenerys said, draping the warmed cloak over her shoulders before lifting the infant. Tiny fingers latched around a lock of silver hair. "Perhaps the dragon's song is louder than mine." Jon brushed a thumb along the baby's brow. "She wakes to storms as I once woke to wolves." He offered his arms. Daenerys surrendered the child. Jon cradled her against his chest, feeling that improbable heat pulsing through her like a second heart. Outside, thunder boomed, and she blinked but did not cry. "Brave already," he murmured. Missandei rose, smoothing the creases in her skirt. "There are moments," she said quietly, "when I almost forget who she is. Then I remember the world outside these walls, and my heart sinks." Her gaze shifted to Daenerys. "Everything changes the instant we hoist sail." Daenerys closed the distance and took Jon's free hand. "Ships may ride storms, but mothers ride fear. Help me keep steady." She pressed her forehead to his. "Your presence steadies Drogon, the council, even me." She laughed, breathless. "You steady everything but the wind. I'd halt that too if I could." He kissed her softly, pulling back before the child squeezed between them, objected. "We leave at dusk. Rest while you can. I want her sleeping when the deck tilts." "Nensawando." Missandei fetched a small wicker basket lined with fleece and placed it near the fire. Jon laid the baby inside, covering her with a quilt Sansa had sewn from scraps of direwolf banner cloth. Daenerys watched the stitches, the snarling gray head half hidden beneath folds, and touched it with reverence. "A piece of Winterfell," she said. North and south wrapped around her. "Someday she'll walk both halls without fear." "If we succeed," Jon reminded. "When we succeed." Daenerys straightened, drawing the queen's mantle around weary shoulders. A fist rapped against the door jamb. Grey Worm stepped in, water streaming down his breastplate. "Everything loaded," he reported. "Storm slows the lower fleet, but soldiers ready. Queen's flagship prepared." Queen's flagship prepared. Sir Davos requests final audience. "I'll meet him in the painted chamber," Daenerys said. Jon lingered as she departed, sitting beside the basket. Rain drummed the shutters with dull persistence, the candle flames shrinking between gusts. The baby's eyelids fluttered while sleep tugged. Jon caught himself counting each breath. An old ranger's habit, used once to measure distance between enemy patrols in the woods. Now, he measured life. A breeze teased the parchments on a nearby table, where Sam had left fresh ink to dry beside a stack of notes. Jon picked one up and recognized Sam's tidy rows of letters cataloging Targaryen birth customs. He sighed and slid the page back. When the child stirred, he bent and whispered a tale of Winterfell's godswood, the quiet hush beneath red leaves, how the heart tree listened without judgment. She blinked up at him, unknowing. But he felt calmer for the telling. Footsteps returned. Sam entered, arms full of books bound in cracked leather. "There you are," he said, nearly tripping over his own boots. "I thought to see if she might keep these for later, etiquettes on teaching royal children. Old scrolls, but..." He saw Jon's expression and halted. "Too soon." "A bit." Jon stroked the baby's cheek. "But bring them anyway. Perhaps Tyrion can recite them at sea." Sam set the books gently on the table. "I've charted her lineage through 4 branches now. She unites the conqueror's blood with the first men in ways never documented." Awe colored his voice. "She might heal more than political rifts, Jon. She could change how the realm sees itself. Not if she never lives to be seen." Jon's words came harsher than intended. He sighed. "Forgive me. Battle crowds my mind." Sam nodded. "Mine too, though I have no sword." "Gilly asked I give you this." He produced a small carved whale made of driftwood. "She said every ship needs a figurehead, and this one warded her against storms." Jon turned the trinket in his palm, surprised by the detail, the curve of a playful tail, the grain suggesting waves. "Tell her it will ride my pocket until the storms calm." Sam watched the child, wonder softening his round face. "Does she smile yet?" "Sometimes," Jon lied, wanting to grant his friend a glimpse of joy. Sam chuckled anyway. "I'll pray to every god, old, new, drowned, and Lord of Light, that she has reason to smile again soon." He gathered his books and bowed his head before slipping away. Jon dozed in the low chair, head tipped back, until hoofbeats struck somewhere below. He started awake, instantly alert, hand drifting to a sword that wasn't there. The baby slept on. He rose and padded to the door, nodding to the unsullied guard, then strode through halls where the stench of pitch filled the air. Sailors had begun caulking hulls with last-minute fervor. At the stairs, he nearly collided with Arya. She appeared from shadow as ghosts do, hair soaked dark against her cheeks, gray eyes alight. "Brother," she greeted, hugging him tight before pulling away. "The North rides with you." Jon blinked, surprise melting into relief and dread. "Sansa sent you. She tried to keep me, but war changes plans quicker than ravens. I brought 40 archers, all veterans of the crypts." She smirked at his raised eyebrow. "The dead we cannot kill taught them patience." She brushed rain back with sleeve. "Where is our niece?" "Sleeping." Jon found himself beaming despite storm weight. "You'll meet her aboard ship. We'll need your eyes. The sea hides more treachery than forests." Arya's gaze sharpened. "Euron Greyjoy hunts us." "I know. I'll watch." "Then?" Jon clasped her forearm. "Thank you." She shrugged. "Thank me when we walk through King's Landing with everyone alive." She vanished down another corridor before he could reply. By late afternoon, rain softened to a chill drizzle that clung rather than fell. The horizon bruised violet black. Davos arranged final provisions on the flagship Wind's Grace. A broad-hulled cog rested from Lannister smugglers months before and refitted with thicker planking to withstand dragon landing. Jon carried the wicker basket himself, cloak hooded low. Daenerys followed, draped in a gray cloak that disguised silver hair, save for one stubborn strand curled along her cheek. Tyrion, Arya, and Missandei flanked her. Unsullied blocked sightlines as they crossed the drenched quay. On the dock, sailors knelt when they recognized their queen, but the command of their captain, an aging Myrish woman named Vara, kept them silent. Vara bowed once and ushered them briskly across the gangplank. The deck tipped under shifting cargo, ropes creaking. Jon placed the basket inside the captain's cabin where a brazier glowed softly. He felt the wood shudder as the hull accepted the sea's restless embrace. The child stirred, lips pursing against air grown thick with brine. Daenerys settled atop a narrow berth beside her, smoothing blankets. Tyrion drew curtains over a small porthole. "I'll see to the council," he said. "Winds favorable once the storm drifts north. We'll sail in its wake." "Winds favorable?" Arya echoed from the doorway. "Or traitor winds chasing our stern." Tyrion smiled ruefully. "In politics, my lady, all winds are traitors. We merely ride the least mutinous." He left, Arya stalking behind. Jon lingered until Daenerys met his gaze. "You must stand on the quarterdeck," she reminded. "The men trust more what they see than what they hear." Jon brushed her knuckles. "Call if she wakes." "She will wake," Daenerys murmured, eyes on the swaddled face. "But you will be beside Dragonfire, not Cradle." He pressed a kiss to her crown and left. Rain had abandoned the waves, leaving them slick and black as oil. Lanterns winked across the harbor where other ships cast off lines. Torches lined Dragonstone's pier like a glowing spine, until one by one they were extinguished by the withdrawing fleet. Each dark ember marking another irrevocable step toward fate. Jon ascended to the quarterdeck, greeting Vara with a nod. "Lifting anchor," she announced. "Current strong, my lord. Keep your dragon leashed until we clear the shallows." Jon scanned the sky. Drogon banked high, a shadow against shredding cloud, followed by Rhaegal's green flicker. No arrows yet. He breathed easier. Davos mounted the steps, cloak snapped by wind. Riders reported Euron's Ironborn moored east of Driftmark. Either he awaits us there, or he knows a better trap. Jon watched the waves slam against black hulls. Pray he underestimates the storm we bring with us. We must also pray Cersei still values walls and scorpions over wildfire. Davos' eye drifted to the dragons. "Else will burn with her." "Why come then, Davos?" "Because I trust you." Davos folded arms across chest. "And because every child deserves a realm worth crawling in." Jon swallowed at the unspoken weight. "I'll remember." Sails billowed. Ropes thrummed. The wind's grace groaned forward. Dragonstone receded behind gray haze, the castle's jagged silhouette dwindling until even the tallest tower vanished inside low clouds. A hush settled over the deck, broken only by gulls and the flap of canvas. Soldiers lined the rails staring toward the faint horizon line, each lost in private prophecy. Night bled slowly across the sea, a deep violet that merged sky and water. A handful of stars flickered overhead, where the storm rump tattered itself thin. Vara ordered all lanterns hooded, save the one at the masthead, and that one wrapped in blue glass to reduce glare. Jon paced the breadth of the quarterdeck, noting every creak, the smell of tar, the taste of salt sheeting across his lips. It felt both new and familiar, a ranger once more, patrolling a frozen forest replaced by endless dark water. He found Tyrion near the stairwell, quill scratching on parchment that fluttered in the wind. "I compose a speech," Tyrion explained without being asked. "Words to soothe the city once we breach its gates." "You write speeches now?" Jon asked. "I always write speeches," Tyrion replied. "I rarely speak them, granted, but the act calms my nerves. Besides, someone should speak for reason while dragons roar." Jon leaned against the rail. "Speak now then. The heart cannot break what the mind forgives," Tyrion quoted, peering up. "Maester Arlen wrote that before he was flayed for treason. I find it comforting, proof that wisdom survives its authors." Let's ensure we outlive our own wisdom. Jon offered a tight smile. Any counsel? Only this. Tyrion rolled the parchment, tying it with red string. When the moment comes to decide the child's name, choose one that belongs to no faction. Create a banner neither side can claim entirely. People follow symbols before they follow men. Jon considered. I'll think on it. Thunder rumbled again, distant. A reminder the storm still lurked beyond the curve of sea. The ship eased into deeper waters, the chop growing sharper. Somewhere below, a faint cry lifted. Jon's heart stilled. Daenerys emerged from the stair with the baby clutched against her shoulder, lullaby half formed on her lips. She won't settle, Daenerys sighed, stepping into their circle of lantern glow. The hull's heartbeat is strange to her. Tyrion bowed out, muttering about speeches. Jon took the babe. She whimpered, small face scrunched. He pressed her ear to his chest and hummed the song of the seven pointed by old Septa Mordain. A song he barely remembered, but the cadence felt right. The child's wails ebbed to soft snuffles. We should rest, he said. Rest. Daenerys glanced toward the rail where dark waves lapped. I hear Euron in every splash. He guided her toward the bow, away from the crew. I fought beside Theon when he died, Jon said. Euron will find a different enemy than he expects. Daenerys brushed wind from her eyes. Does it haunt you? Ghosts of those fallen for causes we keep changing. It reminds me why the cause must end. Jon tightened his hold on both. For her sake. They lingered in quiet until the sea calmed. To Jon it felt as though even tides bent around the sleeping child. Then Vera hissed orders from the quarterdeck. Jon placed the child back into Daenerys' arms and hurried aft. A distant glow burned low along the horizon, orange pinpricks sliding across the water like fallen stars. Vera extended a spyglass. Jon peered. Longships under black sails, lanterns hooded, except where careless waves exposed them. The fleet of Euron Greyjoy. A hush cascaded along the deck as sailors spotted the threat. Grey Worm emerged from shadows. Unsullied, lining the rails like statues. Jon's thoughts raced. Distance, wind, readiness of dragons. He signaled to the sky. 3 loops with a torch. Rhaegal dipped. Drogon answered with a roar that shook rigging. Hold course, Vara ordered. We outrun their oars with wind. She glanced to Jon. Unless you prefer bones on the seabed. Jon considered. Attacking now risked revealing their position too soon. Waiting might allow Euron to set a trap by morning. He felt the weight of child and queen and realm pressing his ribs. Maintain heading, Jon decided. Dragons watch but do not fire unless they close within arrow range. We keep night as our shield. The night complied. For a time. The longships altered course, following but not gaining. Hours marched away, measured by the creak of planks and the groan of ropes. Jon refused sleep, pacing, checking the sky. Twice he descended to the cabin where Daenerys rocked the baby, singing low. Each visit ended with a kiss and silent promise. Shortly before dawn, clouds tore wide enough to reveal a sliver of moonlight. In that pale wash, the longships appeared again. Closer now, their hulls knifing black ribbons through foam. Arya, crouched in the rigging like a wraith, dropped to the deck. They've loosed grapnels on the trailing cog, she warned. Vara cursed and rang a bell. The fleet answered in clanging echoes. Battle call. Jon sprinted for the stairs. Sam stumbled from below, clutching a crossbow he barely knew how to load. Jon iced it anyway, shoving it into the hands of a nearby soldier. Forward, sailors armed with pikes lined the starboard rail. Grey Worm barked orders in Valyrian, Unsullied locked shields. Jon drew Longclaw, the pale blade drinking the moonlight with hungry gleam. Across the gap, Ironborn howled. Their grapnels arced, ropes slithering like serpents across water. The trailing cog reeled as hooks bit its railing. Jon's gut clenched. That ship carried northern archers, and Arya had just returned from its rigging. She darted past, leapt over crates, and vaulted onto a smaller supply boat lashed to their side. "What are you doing?" Jon shouted. "Saving them." She called over her shoulder, cutting the rope loose with needle. The supply boat splashed free. Arya seized a yardarm swinging above and hurled herself onto the cog, now sliding abeam. Jon lost sight of her in the tangle of fighting men. He vaulted to the rail. "Archers!" he roared. Northern bowmen hurried, loosing arrows at shadows flitting across the water. A line of Ironborn fell, but another wave vaulted rails roaring. The two ships scraped sides, masts tangling like sparring giants. Rhaegal's roar cracked the air, green flames slicing the dark. A longship erupted, mast crumbling into embers. The blast illuminated Euron's flagship at the rear, covered in hides to mask its golden kraken. Jon squinted, spotting the man himself at the prow, waving a black feathered hat as though greeting an old friend. Drogon descended in a vertical plunge that rattled the fleet, but Euron's men responded with scorpion bolts that streaked skyward. Drogon twisted. Flame not yet unleashed. Scouting angles. "Keep alive," Jon bellowed, leaping to the grapnel line and hacking the rope. The Ironborn aboard the cog jerked as the gap widened. Arya burst from the fray, blood on her cheek, guiding wounded archers toward the stern deck where sailors heaved bows. Arrows landed about Jon like black rain. One clacked off Longclaw's guard. He ducked, severed another rope, and felt the wind's grace lurch forward as her sails caught a fresh gust. Vara spun the wheel, eyes ablaze. "Rudder," she barked. "If we smash our stern, we're foam." Jon braced the rail as the cog, now half free, veered. Rhaegal soared overhead, unleashing flame that carved a path between fleets, boiling water to steam. Ironborn broke formation, oars frantic. Then the world shook. An explosion of green flame erupted astern of the second supply ship. Wildfire barrels ignited by stray scorpion bolt or dragonfire. Jon couldn't know. The blast hurled men and planks into the air, raining burning pitch. Jon's ears rang. Heat slapped his face. He turned, dread roiling. Daenerys and the child still in the captain's cabin, perilously close to the blast. He vaulted down the stair, smoke choking the corridor. Flames licked ceiling beams. He burst through the cabin door. Inside, Daenerys guarded the cradle, cloak flung wide against flying embers where a shattered porthole smoldered. She saw him, and relief unknotted her shoulders. "Fire breached," she coughed. Jon swept his cloak, smothering sparks on the rug. He yanked down a tapestry, stamping out embers. Daenerys pressed the baby close, the child whimpering against smoke. Jon forced the shutters closed, dogging them tight. "Are you burnt?" he asked, voice raw. "No." She met his eyes. "But she cannot stay here." Jon thought swift. "The hold's safer. Thick walls. Fewer windows." He guided her through the smoke-dimmed corridor, down the narrow ladder. The hold smelled of tar, onions, and damp grain. Crates formed narrow aisles. Rats skittered from lantern light. Jon found a corner behind stacked flour barrels. Grey Worm appeared as if conjured. Spear held low. "The queen stays," Jon ordered. "No one enters without my word." Grey Worm nodded, posting two unsullied at the ladder. Jon squeezed Daenerys' hand. "I must go back." She grabbed his forearm, nails biting through sleeve. "If you fall, I won't." He kissed her swiftly. The child wailed as if sensing rift, but Daenerys rocked her into softer tremors. Jon ascended the ladder into chaos. Smoke drifted across the deck in oily coils. The wildfire blast had scorched the starboard aft, but sailors had contained the flames with buckets and canvas. Varys' commands cracked sharper than whiplash. Rhaegal's silhouette vanished beyond the port side. Drogon's roar receded west. The Ironborn fleet, two vessels ablaze, retreated into darkness. Arya reappeared on the rail, cloak tattered, face smeared with soot but eyes blazing life. She leapt across the widening gap as the cog heaved free, landing with cat-like grace before Jon. Together they watched Euron's flagship turn sternward. sails collapsing as men fought the inferno crawling across its deck. "Will you chase him?" Arya asked. "Not tonight." Jon sheathed Longclaw. "Hell bleed time and men. Our mission lies ahead." Arya wiped blood from her cheek. "Then let's patch holes before the sun finds us." Morning unfurled, pale and weary. The fleet regrouped, while carpenters hammered new planks over scorched wood and sailors scrubbed ash from rigging. The sea, fickle as any courtier, had gentled to rolling swells tipped with soft foam. Dragonstone lay far behind. Crows shadowed scorched wreckage, trailing astern where ironborn hulls drifted, charred husks abandoned. Inside the hold, Daenerys slept sitting upright, one arm curved possessively around the cradle. The child dozed with tiny lips parted, oblivious to terror that had gnawed midnight. Jon crouched beside them, exhaustion pulling at his bones. He had stripped down to tunic, pale with sweat and salt. When Daenerys' eyes opened, the flicker of fear still haloed her pupils. "They fled?" she whispered. "For now?" he answered, tucking a stray curl behind her ear. "We lost 2 ships. No survivors found yet." "Da." Pain pinched her brow. "I will mourn them after we save the rest." Jon glanced at the infant. "She slept through cannon fire," he marveled. Daenerys smiled weakly. "She dreams of dragons, I think. Their roar calms her. Then she's more Targaryen than Stark, or braver than both." Her gaze softened. "She needs a name soon. If death stalks every wave, let her greet it with introduction." Jon felt the truth settle like gravity. He remembered Tyrion's advice, earlier resolve, each whispered oath. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the carved wooden whale, its curve smooth beneath ash-stained fingers. "Lyanna," he said quietly. "A name that once began a war, yet still means hope to me. And Alysanne," Daenerys finished, tears brightening her eyes. "After the good queen who opened gates to peace." He nodded. "Lyanna Alysanne. Wolf and dragon in one call." Daenerys traced the name in the air above their child. "And the realm will learn to bow to her, not out of fear, but because they wish to follow." They watched her breathe. Beyond the hull, seagulls cried, heralding land hidden still beneath morning mist. Ahead lay Blackwater Bay, the Red Keep, a city choking on secrets. But for a moment, within a hold lined by barrels and flickering lanterns, the war paused, and the future cooed in her sleep, unaware she had just been given the power to mend a broken world. Up on deck, Tyrion leaned on the rail. Quill halted mid-sentence as though he sensed the shift in fate. Grey Worm adjusted a new shield upon his arm, unsullied, murmuring oaths. Davos unrolled a weather-beaten chart, plotting the safe channel past Shipbreaker, Bay. Arya sharpened needle with patient strokes. Rhaegal circled overhead, wings catching the early sun, while Drogon glided toward the horizon where the water darkened into the sullen green of the Blackwater. Jon emerged, shoulders squared by the naming he carried. He met Tyrion's questioning gaze, and simply said, "Prepare the men. We make King's Landing by dusk tomorrow." Tyrion searched his eyes, found resolve deeper than any crown, and dipped his head. "As you command, Lord Stark. Or shall I say, King beyond banners?" "Denderol." "Say nothing yet," Jon answered, weight of prophecy balanced by the carved whale resting warm against his chest. "Let the city discover who leads when the gates open. Not before." He lifted face to sun, breathing salt and smoke, and imagined Lyanna Alysanne someday walking these same decks, hair snapping in sea wind, dragons swirling overhead. The thought filled him the way the dawn once filled the long-hunted woods of the north, with a quiet, unbreakable promise that after every night comes light, and after every war, the chance, however fragile, to build again. Kai. A pall of smoke hovered over the mouth of the Blackwater, like a bruise that would not heal, darkening the rising sun and tamping its warmth beneath a sour haze. The wind's grace cut a slow arc into the estuary, her patched sails breathing in and out while Vera conned her through the shoals that had broken more fleets than the histories cared to count. Jon stood at the prow, salt wind tangling his hair. The carved whale pressed like an oath against his breastbone. Ahead, half shrouded by river mist, the broken mast of Stannis Baratheon's flagship still jutted from the shallows. Ghostwood splintered by wildfire years before. Gulls roosted there now, and their cries lanced the hush that had fallen over the deck. Behind him the fleet uncoiled, a procession of patched cogs, dromons and nors, their hulls scorched from Euron's night attack yet stubbornly afloat. Black sails mingled with striped Myrish canvas and northern gray, the colors tangled like truths the realm could no longer keep separate. Above, Drogon and Rhaegal wheeled silently, each beat of their wings shifting the fog in ragged curtains that opened briefly on the distant crown of Aegon's high hill, where the Red Keep loomed crimson and indifferent. Jon could feel the city's pulse even from here. King's Landing breathed hot and uneven, its stench borne downriver with the tide. Tallow smoke, latrine rot, sour wine, and underneath it all the faint copper tang that spoke of ironworks churning out new scorpion bolts day and night. It was the smell of a beast driven half mad by fear, of Cersei's fear, of the people's fear, of the fire waiting in Daenerys' veins should grief slip its leash. He turned as Vara murmured coarse corrections to her pilot, then descended the companionway to the quarterdeck. Tyrion stood beside the binnacle, one hand braced against the rail as the ship lurched on a hidden current. His scarred face was unreadable in the gray light. "Ravens crossed the fleet an hour ago," Tyrion said without greeting. "Varys' remaining little birds have counted 18 new trebuchets along the city walls. 24. If you count the half-finished frames, they'll hurry to load with whatever rubble they can find." Jon's jaw clenched. Starving men hurl stones to protect the queen who starves them. "Power tastes better than bread," Tyrion answered. "Until it doesn't." Grey Worm approached, helm tucked beneath his arm. "Unsullied prepared to land on the south bank," he reported. "Archers will cover advance." "Sandbars, they're shallow. Scorpions shoot low angles only. Have them dig ditches the moment they secure a line," Jon said. "We build cover before Cersei realizes we aren't storming the gates tonight." Tyrion's brow lifted. "Not tonight. Not until the city is ready to fall into our open hands." Jon's gaze drifted to the fog-throttled banks. "We choke her slowly. No wildfire, no dragonfire. Not unless she forces it. And no." He felt Tyrion weighing those words, searching for proof they would hold when the sky caught flame. At length, the dwarf exhaled. "Slow sieges and faster tempers rarely share the same story," he said. "But I'm glad to hear you tell it." A bell clanged below. Vara shouted for crews to strike sail. The wind's grace yawed, settling into the river's main channel. Jon descended to the main deck, boots squelching on planks still slick with dew. Daenerys emerged from the stern castle, Lyanna Alysanne swaddled against her breast beneath a sling of soft gray wool. Missandei shadowed her, cloak drawn tight, though the morning carried no true chill, only the chill of what waited beyond the river bend. Jon met them halfway. The child's dark-rimmed eyes tracked him, unfocused but intent. He brushed a fingertip across her cheek, then helped Daenerys steady as the ship slewed. "She slept?" he asked. "A few hours." Daenerys' smile wavered. "Dreams full of wings if her twitching means anything." Missandei smoothed back the queen's wind-tossed hair. Rhaegal dipped low earlier, as if to greet her. "Perhaps dragons dream of children too." Jon's throat tightened. He cleared it and gestured toward the rail. "You'll see the city soon. Better here than when we land." Daenerys stepped forward until the river breeze tugged her cloak. The far bank resolved in strips through the fog. The grim rampart of the Mudgate, sentry fires still glowing dull orange. Beyond, a press of timber hovels stacked like rotten teeth against the wall, choked lanes already swelling with dawn traffic. She rocked on her heels, weight shifting over the ship's slow roll, and Lyanna Alysanne pressed a fist against her mother's heart, as though knocking for entry. 500,000 souls inside those walls, Daenerys murmured. Children layered beneath mothers, beneath old men, beneath iron. One wrong spark, and they burned together. "Bam?" Jon edged closer until his shoulder brushed hers. "We give them every door out." "Will Cersei open a door she did not build?" Daenerys asked. "No," Jon admitted. so we built it ourselves." From above came a cry. Half screech, half roar. Drogon's shadow ghosted across the deck, massive wingspan blotting the dawn for an instant. Daenerys looked up. Mother and dragon regarded one another through the mist. She lifted a hand, palm out as if offering the world's most fragile bargain. Drogon's reply was a rumble that made rigging hum. Jon waited until the black shape banked away before he spoke. "He follows you because you lead him, or because he fears what happens if he loses me." A hint of rue curled her mouth. "We are as much captives as riders." Missandei glanced toward the quarterdeck, where Tyrion conversed with Vara. "The council meets below in an hour." "I will come," Daenerys said. She handed the child to Jon first, needing both hands to steady on the pitching deck. Jon accepted the warm bundle, surprised each time by the weight. Light enough he could forget what she meant, until he felt her heartbeat under his palm. Then she seemed heavier than the world. Lyanna Alysanne's eyes darted at the shifting rigging above, untroubled by timbers creaking overhead or the gulls squabbling near the forecastle. "I'll walk her," Jon said. "The deck calms her." Daenerys nodded, squeezed his elbow, and followed Missandei toward the ladder that led to the captain's quarters. Jon paced the port side, whispering nonsense about the history of the wall, about ghosts in snow, about the first time he felt the thrum of a sword's pommel against his ribs. The baby's eyelids sagged, lashes trembling like small moth wings. Across the bay, the fog began to thin as a west wind rose. The city emerged in rust-red and dirty yellow hues. The domes of Baelor's sept shattered but still defiant. The Tower of the Hand leaning slightly east where wildfire had eaten its foundation. And above all, the Red Keep's highest tower where the Queen's banner flapped. A golden lion on crimson field, topped by an iron crown glinting red in the light. Jon's stomach nodded, remembering the secret passages crisscrossing those walls. Cersei would be watching this very river. He shifted the child higher, adjusting the sling. A new sound carried across the water. A low horn note, the call of a watchtower. Jon peered aft and saw smoke rising from the city walls. Signal fires. Cersei knew they had arrived. Below decks, the council met in the cramped chart room, where casks of fresh water served as impromptu seats. Tyrion spread vellum maps over a trestle dripping with condensation. The room smelled of resin and wool, the steady thump of the keel reverberating like a distant drum. Jon entered last, Lyanna asleep upon his chest. Heads turned. Grey Worm, Arya, Davos, Gendry recently summoned for his growing knowledge of scorpions. Sam, pale with the memory of wildfire. Jon Royce representing Sansa and the Vale Knights, and the Queen standing at the map's edge, one hand braced on a beam as the ship pitched. Tyrion tapped a wooden block shaped like the Red Keep. Cersei concentrated scorpions along the northern and eastern walls after our stunt at the Dragon Pit. If she has wildfire, she has, Davos interrupted. Sailors locked in Flea Bottom swear they saw barrels marked with the pyromancer's star moved at night beneath the cobbler's keep. Tyrion's mouth thinned. Then the child is right to sleep through this council. She'll hear worse before she walks. Jon eased into the circle, careful of the infant's head. We cannot endanger civilians. You said it yourself, Daenerys. Daenerys straightened, shoulders stiff. I did, and I meant it. She fixed Tyrion with a stare. Every plan begins with evacuation. Which door? He asked softly. The lioness guards every gate. She'll butcher anyone trying to leave. Then Jon spoke before Daenerys could answer. We open the sewer tunnels south of the Dragon Pit. They're half collapsed but still reach the river. Arya can guide small teams to clear blockages. Once passages open, our sailors ferry citizens across to camp on the south bank. Tyrion lifted an eyebrow. You plan to shepherd a city through rat holes while arrows whistle overhead? Yes. Silence stretched. Arya scratched her ear. I can map 5 tunnels that still breathe, she offered. Gendry knows the drainage grates. We break iron bars and have routes before sunset. Then? Sam found a measure of courage. The Faith militant still hold the ruins of the Great Sept Some remain loyal to Sparrow teachings, not Cersei. They might protect evacuees. Cersei stripped them of weapons, Tyrion warned. But hope is weapon enough sometimes. Daenerys exhaled. We move tonight. Unsullied dig lines outside the city to protect the camps. Jon leads the tunnel strike. Drogon and Rhaegal circle but do not burn unless necessary. She touched the sling's edge where the baby's hand curled. I ride only if scorpions threaten. Jon nodded. Agreed. Royce cleared his throat. And what of the Golden Company inside those walls? 10,000 swords untested but eager. Grey Worm's lip curled faintly. Let them come. Earth will drink their gold the same. Tyrion tapped another token, moving it toward the river gate. Not if we can buy them. Mercenaries follow coin. Cersei's lies cost gold. Too late, Royce argued. They're contracted. Honor among sellswords, at least until coin runs dry. We should test how dry. Tyrion looked at Jon. Open a channel. Promise double wages and land in the Reach. Sellswords like farms once swords dull. Recall how the ancient Targaryens turned Andal invaders into riverlords. Daenerys' gaze flickered with intrigue. Send Davos. A smuggler is a master of doors no one sees. Davos dipped his head. I'll sail a skiff tonight, quiet as a cat. Tyrion added, bring candy for the officers. Sweet tongues buy sweeter deals. Davos sighed. And maybe a daughter or two to wed. If only I had one to spare. Plans spiraled outward from that small jest, filling the close air with talk of supply chains, sally ports, watch rotations, the breeding cycles of dragons, Sam's contribution, and the length of time a newborn could safely remain in a humid siege camp. Every turn of the conversation led back to the child, even when she slept silent. She was the knot no sword could sever, the one piece of the game Cersei could not anticipate, and so would fear most if she learned of it. The council dissolved at midday. Jon carried Lyanna Alisand to a tiny cabin beneath the waterline, where the gentle rise and fall of the hull lulled her back to deeper sleep. He lay her in a basket, padded with direwolf quilt, then returned topside where the river breeze felt sharp as a whetstone after the lamplit gloom. Shorelines parted. The fog had burned away, revealing ramshackle wharves lining both banks. Fishermen stared slack-jawed at the great black dragon espied circling above. Children chased gulls through puddles, left by an early high tide, until mothers yanked them screaming into doorways. Jon's heart clenched at each small face. The siege had begun, and none of them knew. Near dusk, little ships put off from the wind's grace. 5 longboats under black canvas. Jon commanded the lead with Arya, Gendry, and a dozen unsullied picked for stealth. The river lapped thick, choked with runoff from tanneries upriver. They rowed with muffled oars, skirting hulks beached by the Battle of the Blackwater's fires, the charred ribs of those wrecks jutting like dark prayer poles against a dying sky. They made landfall on a narrow spit of mud at the foot of Rhaenys Hill where a broken culvert gaped, half submerged. Arya slipped ashore first, her feet sinking ankle-deep. This way, she whispered. The tunnel veers right after 10 paces. Mind the drop. Bran once fell there. Gendry hefted a pry bar. Bars here rusted through years ago. Easy enough. Unsullied formed a cordon while Jon crouched at the lip of the culvert, nose wrinkling at the rank stench. The tunnels breathed warm like the throat of some slumbering beast. He unsheathed Longclaw. The pale blade caught what little twilight remained. Inside, the air changed. Sound deadened beneath packed earth, every drip magnified. Generations of refuse clung to the walls, slicking the stones. Rats scattered in waves ahead of their tread. Arya led swiftly, memory guiding through blind turns where the collapse of the sept had snarled whole arteries of the sewer. Twice they crawled on hands and knees beneath sagging masonry, grit and bone, and gods knew what crumbling in their hair. Jon forced calm breath. He had known the icy silence of a tunnel beneath the wall. This was no different save the warmth, and the crawling sense of being watched by the dead of 10 centuries. They reached the choke point, a pile of rubble where a vault had surrendered. Beyond, Jon could hear the muffled roar of river flow. Gendry wedged the pry bar and heaved. Bricks shifted with a groan. Unsullied formed a human chain, passing stones backward. Hours ebbed. Sweat turned the air sodden. Jon's arms shook, muscles burning as he hauled chunk after chunk. Finally, a gust of river air knifed through, cool and tinged with salt. They widened the breach until a man might pass crouched. Jon squeezed through first, sliding down a slope of broken brick into a corridor wide enough for 2 wagons abreast. He straightened and found himself beneath a grate. Through it he glimpsed the faint glow of street torches, the underside of an ox cart rumbling by. The tunnel floor slanted gently toward the river. In the distance, a glimmer of silver marked the water's reflection. "Path's clear," he called, voice hushed. "We open gates tomorrow." They retraced steps, leaving markers of chalk, area mixed from lime and ash. When they gained daylight again, the moon was high, a pale coin behind thin clouds. Across the water, small campfires dotted the southern bank where Unsullied had erected palisades in silent efficiency. Jon saw sentry torches pacing ramparts that had not existed that morning. War builds faster than peace, he thought bitterly. They rode back. On the main deck of the Winds, Grace the Mood was taut but hopeful. Daenerys received them at the rail, crownless hair braided back for speed. She scanned their faces, lingering longest on Jon's bruised knuckles, then on Arya's torn sleeve. "Any alarms?" she asked. "None," Arya answered, tugging off her gloves. "The city sleeps." "It wakes early," Daenerys murmured. "And we must coax it out the door before noon." Jon gave details. Tunnel cleared, great location, the plan for Unsullied scouts to guide first waves of civilians at dawn. Daenerys listened, arms folded, eyes flaring only when he described the sagging masonry overhead. "Dangerous," she said. "I'll have Drogon perch above those streets tonight. His presence alone will keep scorpions pointed skyward, away from the riverbank." "And," Jon bit back alarm, "if they fire, he will not burn?" She cut in. Then softer, "Not unless they shoot first." She looked toward the dark shape circling the moon. "He understands restraint better than I." The next hours blurred. Davos sailed under a false flag upriver, slipping past sentry posts by offering casks of Dornish wine, courtesy of Tyrion's private stores, to the Golden Company's riverside outposts. Jon never learned the content of those conversations, only that Davos returned near dawn with a torn sail, a new gash on his cheek, and a grin sharper than a shark's. "Half their captains prefer to live," Davos reported to the council in hushed excitement. "They'll open gate if we give them safe conduct and 50,000 golden dragons." Tyrion whistled. "A cheap throne." "We'll pay it." Daenerys nodded. "Pay it in copper if need be. We buy time, not loyalty." Morning bled over the camps. Smoke from cook fires twined with the fog again. But this time the fog retreated under sunlit banners. The direwolf, the dragon, the broken stag of Baratheon carried by Gendry smiths, and the silver horse of the Dothraki who had crossed in secret 3 nights earlier, silent under quarter moon. Their call, Cuhono, stood barefoot on the bank, harebells chiming softly, watching the city with the hungry gaze of men who have never known walls they could not ride through. At first light, Jon rowed a skiff with Grey Worm back to the culvert. Unsullied emerged from hidden places across the riverbank, guiding frightened households they'd found near the bread market. Starved women clutching children in rags, old men tottering on swollen feet, a handful of cobblers still gripping wooden lasts like weapons. They shuffled toward the tunnel mouth, unsure whether salvation or slaughter waited inside the dark. Jon met their eyes, raising gloved hands to show no blade. Arya offered a water skin to a boy whose lips cracked with thirst. Word spread. The Dragon Queen offered grain across the river. The tunnel's mouth became a slow trickling stream of humanity. Yet rumors ran faster than any stream. By mid-morning, bells clashed within the city. Cersei's horns lowed, commanding citizens inside. The trickle slowed as gold cloaks threw up barricades at crossings, beating back panicked folk with cudgels. Shouts echoed overhead. The grate rattled with bodies pressing. Jon's blood-iced hearing the thud of batons against flesh. He signaled the Unsullied. "Maintain order, do not kill unless struck with lethal force." Grey Worm moved like thought, forming shield walls that absorbed fleeing civilians. The operation became rescue as much as exfiltration. Soon the alley above rang with cracking wood as iron-tipped bolts quarried into roof tiles. A scorpion had been hauled to the street level. One bolt speared through a grate bar, skipping sparks along the tunnel ceiling. Jon pressed civilians back, raising shield taken from an unsullied. "Hurry!" he barked, praying to gods old and new that the masonry wouldn't collapse with the next strike. A shadow consumed the alley's sunlight. Drogon descended, wings flattening air so hard dust blossomed in clouds. Jon glimpsed black talons clutch the rooftop. Slate shattered under the weight. Scorpion crews scattered, bolts forgotten. Drogon opened his jaws but released only a hiss of steam, no fire. The city wall watchman froze, transfixed by that restraint. Drogon's head tilted, one great golden eye sweeping the alley like the sun itself. Then, satisfied the threat had broken, he launched skyward, the tip of his tail scything through chimney pots. In the hush that followed, the grate above rattled once more. Not with bolts, but with voices pleading, "Let us through, my babe, please." Jon barked for ladders. Unsullied hauled civilians down in orderly lines. Bakers, masons, a septa clutching candles, 3 merchants dragging a locked chest between them. Jon lost count after the first 100 souls. Behind them he saw no sign of gold cloaks. They had retreated to safer streets. By noon, more than 2,000 people thronged the southern bank, herded into makeshift lanes where healers triaged wounds, cooks ladled thin stew, and scribes recorded names on parchment for future reunions. Daenerys walked among them with Missandei and Sam, offering waterskins and blankets. Lyanna Alisan rode in the sling at her chest, face half hidden by the hood. When whispers rose, "Is that the queen?" Daenerys merely smiled and moved on, refusing to claim title, while others thirsted. That afternoon, Davos' second parley unfolded below the Gate of the Gods. Jon watched from a rooftop commandeered by archers. Davos, Tyrion, and 2 captains from the Golden Company met on a pier littered with fish guts. The mercenary officers removed their helms, revealing sun-reddened cheeks and anxious eyes. Words floated across the water carried by no wind. Jon could not hear, but he saw postures soften. Shoulders sag in relief. Scrolls changed hands. A coin purse heavier than honor changed hands next. The Sellswords departed in an open boat rowing back to the city. Tyrion exhaled so deeply, Jon swore he felt the board beneath his boots vibrate. "I'll still sleep with dagger drawn," Jon muttered. "Sleep with 2, Arya advised, sliding from shadow beside him. "Or none, if you mean to wake alive." Night fell early behind churning storm clouds. Lanterns glimmered like drowned stars across the river encampments. In the Queen's tent, no larger or finer than any captain's, Jon, Daenerys, and the infant gathered with Tyrion and Missandei. A map lay unrolled between tin cups of watered wine. Outside, the hum of thousands settling to uneasy sleep filled the air. It sounded to Jon like a great beast breathing. "Tomorrow we present terms," Tyrion said. "Offer grain caravans, guarantee safe passage to all inside. Cersei will refuse. Then we breach," Grey Worm added from the entrance, voice low. Daenerys looked down at Lyanna, now awake and testing her limbs in slow stretches. "Not yet. We must show those walls that every hour Cersei refuses. More children cross the river to safety. The city will make the choice for her. Cersei spies will have counted dragons by now," Jon warned. "She may strike first." Tyrion's mouth twisted. If her wildfire caches truly riddle the city, one spark can undo all. He touched the edge of the map where the hill of Rhaenys sagged under ash from the last Sep's fall. "We need her contained, or we need her gone," Arya said, slipping into the tent unannounced, eyes hard as obsidian. "A blade in the dark ends sieges quicker than promises." Daenerys' jaw tightened. "We tried that once with the Night King. Some foes carry blades of their own in every shadow." Jon caught Arya's glance. The unspoken memory of a face swapped, a name whispered beneath the Hall of Faces. Here, though, the walls themselves were faces, watching. He shook his head. Not yet. Arya sheathed nothing because she had never drawn, merely nodded and slid back into dusk. After the council dispersed, Jon walked the outer perimeter. Campfires crackled. A column of Reach spearmen arrived after sunset, muddy and bone-tired, bringing fresh grain that sweetened the night air. He paused at a healer's awning where Gilly bandaged a woman's arm while Sam read passages from a tattered seven-pointed star. Under another awning, children chased fireflies in circles, their laughter crisp against distant thunder. He returned to the Queen's tent past midnight. Inside, he found Daenerys half asleep against rolled blankets, Lyanna suckling slowly. Candlelight gilded mother and child in tender gold. Jon knelt, brushing stray strands from Daenerys' face. She opened her eyes, smiled faintly. "Have we made a better world yet?" she whispered. "We've made a start." He kissed her forehead. "Sleep. Got it." She closed her eyes again. Jon lay beside them, feeling the heartbeat of river, camp, dragons above. Sleep hovered but did not claim him. He listened instead to the child's quiet breathing and counted heartbeats until they carried him into the gray between night and dawn. Morning broke with trumpet blasts from the city. Jon jerked awake. Droplets rattled canvas. Light rain. Outside, Unsullied assembled in formation lines simpler than any parade. Shields up. Spears grounded. Helms gleaming dull in the wet. Jon strapped sword belt. Splashed water on his face from a basin, and emerged into chilled drizzle. On the river, barges slid toward the city's quays bearing grain sacks, stacked like gold. Tyrion rode in the lead barge under white flag, flanked by Davos and Missandei. Jon watched until they vanished beyond the first arch. He hated parley more than battle. Words left wounds maps couldn't predict. Hours passed. Rain steadied, flattening the camp's dust into thick rivulets. Rhaegal perched on a stony outcrop above, steam curling from nostrils, wings slack. Drogon patrolled unseen in cloud cover. The city's walls remained silent, banners drooping like wilted tongues. Near noon, Tyrion's barge re-emerged, alone. Jon met him at the bank, reading answer in the dwarf's posture before he spoke. "Well?" Jon asked. "Her Grace declines our generosity," Tyrion said wearily. "She will allow an additional 1,000 children to leave before dusk as token of good faith. After that, no more." Jon's fists clenched. "She means to use them as shields. She means to starve them until they riot or die." Tyrion rubbed rain from his eyes. "And she denies the Golden Company's contract repudiation. She has them penned within Maegor's holdfast." Gendry cursed softly. Davos spat into mud. Daenerys arrived, cloak trailing. "No more then." Her voice was quiet iron. "At dusk we breach." Jon looked at her, searching for the wildfire he had feared. He found instead something colder. Glacial resolve, not rage. He nodded. Preparations began at once. Unsullied constructed mantlets from ship planks and tarpaulin, rolling them to the riverbank as portable walls. Gendry and his smiths assembled scorpion fragments scavenged from wrecks, rebarreled them, and mounted atop earthen berms to counter the city's own machines. Northern archers tested bowstrings warped by damp. Arya moved among them, correcting stances learned in snowy courtyards years and crimes ago. Jon walked the trench lines until dusk, exchanging nods, quiet words, a squeeze of shoulder here, a silent vow there. He carried no banners, only the memory of his father teaching that true lords eat last. He did not eat at all. Sunset bled red behind the city, turning windows to blood-streaked mirrors. Thunder rumbled though no lightning answered. At the command trench, Daenerys mounted a palisade ladder, baby left sleeping in a guarded tent deeper in camp. She surveyed the walls, eyes narrowing as torches lit in ordered rows. Grey worms stood at her right, Jon at her left. "When the first torch atop the Iron Gate dies," she said, "Rhaegal will strike the outer scorpions. Drogon will keep the sky." Jon cleared throat. "I want no fire within the walls until I signal." She regarded him. You fear I cannot hold. I fear anyone can break under enough grief. Silence. Finally she placed a hand over his on the railing. Then remind me. He squeezed her fingers, then turned as horns sounded. The iron gate's parapet flared bright, then darkened. Torches doused in unison. The Golden Company perhaps fulfilling bargain. Jon raised a green pennant. The waiting dragons answered. Rhaegal's roar cracked across the sky. Wing beats pounded air. He dove toward the northern wall where scorpions pivoted, bolts loosing in jagged volleys. Green flame engulfed the parapet, smithing stone to glass. The wall itself held, but crews scattered, weapons unmanned. Unsullied advanced beneath mantlets. Shields interlocked. Spears bristling. Northern bowmen loosed covering fire, arrows whistling through smoke toward silhouettes on battlements. Jon led the first assault wave across the exposed beachhead, mud sucking boots. Smoke stung eyes and throat. Lime dust drifted from shattered ramparts. He felt the familiar heat of battle rise, a tide that quickened blood and stilled doubt. But he held the leash tight. No reckless charge, no chasing kills. At the base of the wall, ladders lifted. Hooked. Unsullied climbed, blades glittering. Jon followed second ladder, heart thudding like fists on iron. Arrows clattered off his shield. He reached the parapet, where a Lannister sergeant swung a mace. Jon ducked, drove Longclaw upward, the Valyrian steel carving armor as though it were butter. He kicked the falling body away lest it drag ladder loose. Beside him, Grey Worm gutted a pikeman with efficient thrust. Unsullied poured over, forming wedge that drove defenders back along the wall. The Northmen raised their banner. Gendry's hammers shattered scorpion frames. Arya darted between gaps, needle finding exposed throats. Below in the narrow alleys, citizens peered from shutters, wide-eyed at dragons roaring overhead, yet seeing ground troops sparing surrendering guards. Word rippled faster than flame. The Queen's army showed mercy. Jon led a column toward the Iron Gate's inner yard where the Golden Company knelt weapons down. 500 men, the rest sequestered deeper as Cersei's hostages. A Lysine captain stepped forward, helm under arm. We await your safe conduct. Granted, Jon said. Lay down arms, march to the riverbank. Grain and coin await. Nendo. The captain saluted with 2 fingers and began barking in High Valyrian to his men. Jon turned before the relief could register. The city was a labyrinth, and the night still young. He pushed deeper, units splitting at each crossroads. Unsullied to secure arsenals, Northmen to man the walls, Dothraki finally loosed, riding wide arcs to intercept gold cloaks retreating toward the Red Keep. Fires burned along Flea Bottom where abandoned cook fires had tipped. Jon ordered water brigades formed from city wells left unpoisoned. Rhaegal's green flame fell only on scorpions, never on roofs. Yet the enemy still stood. Cersei's household guard had barricaded Maegor's holdfast. Scorpions nested on its towers, bolts gleaming even in torchfire. The mountain that was Gregor Clegane stalked the Barbican parapet, indented black plate, eyes red as furnaces. And somewhere in those blood-streaked halls, Cersei watched the city slip from her grasp. Jon regrouped at the base of the Red Keep's outer stairs before dawn's first gray. Wind carried smoke, and the low moans of wounded, but fewer than he'd feared. He flicked sweat from his brow, surveyed assembled captains. Grey Worm's mail speckled with soot, Kono's braids smoking from some near miss, Arya miraculously unbloodied though her cloak dripped. Tyrion limped in with Davos, face streaked by mud and what might have been tears. The tunnels flow both ways, Tyrion croaked. Half the city is across the river. Cersei will have none to shield. Jon nodded. Then, we end it. He turned to Grey Worm. Ram the doors. Unsullied hefted a battering ram. Moke trunk bound in iron. Dragon head carved into its prow. They advanced. Shields above to deflect arrows. Scorpion bolts rained, clanging off mantlets. The ram struck iron-bound gates. Once, twice, thrice. Each boom echoed heartbreak through the courtyard. On the 4th strike, hinges shrieked and parted. Jon raised shield, led surge under arrow storms into the outer yard of the Red Keep. They fought step by step. Gold cloaks broke early, some throwing helms aside for mercy. Lannister crossbowmen held longer, cut down only when Kuhonos horsemen vaulted staircases in impossible leaps. Grey Worm dueled a knight in gilded plate until the man's sword shattered under an obsidian spear point. Jon found himself at the foot of Maegor's holdfast as dawn burst behind him. The keep's towers cast long red shadows. Fires crackled in ruined parapets. He heard a shriek, not human, but the roar of Drogon descending. The black dragon perched upon the throne room's roof, wings half furled, tail coiling around a spire. Scorpion crews fled at the sight, abandoning cranks. Within the courtyard quiet fell, broken only by crackle of tinder and the distant weeping of survivors. Jon stood among blades cocked for more blood, but none came. He turned slowly, seeing faces. Unsullied Northmen. City folk with soot-smeared cheeks, watching him, and waiting for the next order. He lowered Longclaw. Hold. In that breath of stillness, Arya slipped past him, darting toward a sally door left ajar. He thought to call her back, but the words snagged in his throat. The wolf needed no leash. He let her pass. Moments stretched. Then a horn blew from the city's high rampart. Twice. Pause. Once. The signal prearranged. Tyrion limped forward, eyes shining. The bells, he whispered. And across the battered skyline, the belfries of the great sept, makeshift though they were, began to toll. Clear, resonant, impossible bells. They rolled through smoke and rubble, over blood and broken stone. They told the living that battle had ended, that surrender had come, that the city belonged to new keepers. Jon closed his eyes. He thought of Lyanna Alisan on the riverbank nursing at dawn. He thought of Robb on a battlefield long ago, of Daenerys' mourning children burned in Meereen. He thought of every voice that had guided him to this hour. When he opened his eyes, the army had lowered weapons in unison, obeying a command he had not given, but had delivered nonetheless. He felt relief settle in his bones like winter sunlight, pale and cautious, but undeniably warm, yet not complete. Cersei still held the inner holdfast. The mountain still paced above, and wildfire slept under floors unknown. Jon turned to Grey Worm. Guard the gates, heal the wounded. No looting, no burning. Grey Worm saluted, voice flat but firm. Ace, you command. Jon handed Longclaw to Davos for cleaning, and started up the keep's main stair alone. Halfway he paused, sensing someone behind. Daenerys stood 2 steps below, cloak crimson in dawn, hair unbound and ash-streaked. Her lips parted as if to speak, yet no words came. So he offered his hand, and together they mounted the last stairs. They passed beneath Drogon's vast shadow. Inside, the hall of 100 hearths lay choked with dust, tapestries scorched, the dragon skulls lining the walls newly cracked by Drogon's landing. At the far end, the iron throne glimmered beneath broken stained glass. On its razor seat sat no one. Footsteps echoed from a side corridor. Arya emerged, sword clean, face unreadable. She shook her head once. Cersei gone, or hiding. Jon felt weariness sluice through him. Check the dungeons, he told her. She vanished without a word. He turned to Daenerys. We find the queen and end it before nightfall. Daenerys' gaze lingered on the throne. She stepped away from him, almost unconsciously, toward that tangled mass of melted swords. Her fingers brushed a twisted blade, then withdrew. It's smaller than I imagined, she murmured. It always is, Jon said. She faced him, the first light crowning her hair in living fire. Fetch Lyanna. I want her to see what we spared her. Jon nodded and started for the door, then halted as a sound shivered through the cracked windows. A low rumble not belonging to dragon or thunder. His hand dropped a hiltless belt. The rumble rose beneath their feet, a subterranean groan. Wildfire. Run, he barked, grabbing Daenerys by the arm. They sprinted down the hall as the floor bucked behind, green light seeping through flagstones. Screams erupted in lower corridors. Jon shoved a side door. It jammed. He slammed shoulder, wood splintering. They tumbled into a narrow servant passage lined with rat-gnawed shelves. The groan became a roar. A shockwave flung them forward. Dust and emerald flame chased their heels. Jon covered Daenerys with his body, feeling heat lick like molten teeth. Then darkness swallowed sound. When he woke, silence reigned but for crackling sparks. Dust hung so thick it tasted of copper. He shifted, finding his sword gone, ears ringing. Daenerys stirred beneath him, coughing. He rolled aside, helped her sit. A breach gaped where wall once stood, opening onto sky stained gold by sunrise. The Iron Throne no longer visible behind the smoke. Half the hall had collapsed in on itself. They staggered through the breach onto a tilted section of floor now hanging above the courtyard. Grey Worm, Tyrion, and others below stared upward in horror. Jon waved, signaling alive, then led Daenerys along a precarious ledge to a stair still intact. Each step crunched rubble. Fire flickered in pocket blazes where wildfire had sprayed, but the main cache had not detonated. Praise every god. Outside the bells still rang, though one now cracked mid-toll. Drogon roared overhead, frantic until he spotted Daenerys. He circled, calming. Jon met Tyrion at the stairbase. A single cache, the dwarf said, voice thick with smoke. Left by Aerys, never mapped. A warning from the dead. Jon looked back at the shattered hall. The Iron Throne stood at the edge of a charred chasm, half its blades sheared away by blast. It looked like a skeleton bereft of flesh. Daenerys exhaled. "Let it stand as it is," she said. "A throne broken by its own fire. We sit elsewhere." Then Shandi. Jon reached for her hand. "Where?" "Among the people." She turned, scanning the courtyard where soldiers escorted weary citizens past smoldering carts. In a marketplace rebuilt from ashes. Tyrion wiped soot from his cheek. "The cobblers will protest the lack of marble." "Let them," she said with a tired smile. "None must bow to a chair again." Jon squeezed her hand. Below, in the city's gutted streets, Lyanna Alasan lay in Gilly's arms, cooing up at smoke-wreathed sky, unaware that her birth had guided dragons and wolves to this brink. She would never know the sound of scorpion bolts or the taste of river muck in her mouth. Only bells, and perhaps one day, songs. As dawn claimed King's Landing for a new day, Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen to the ghosts, stood beside a queen who no longer desired the throne she had bled to reach. Behind them, the shattered seat hissed where wildfire sputtered out, its blades cooling in the mist, a monument not to conquest, but to the fragile peace forged by a child's quiet heartbeat, and by those who chose at the last to listen to it. Ka. Dust drifted down the broken shaft where the roof of Maegor's holdfast had collapsed, sifting through shafts of watery dawn like spores searching for new life. The air tasted of sour smoke and shattered stone, but morning light touched every jagged edge with hesitant grace, as though the sun itself were surprised the Red Keep still stood at all. Workers, townsfolk pressed into duty by the promise of coin and bread, formed human chains across the rubble, passing charred timbers to a mounting pile in the courtyard. Every few heartbeats the chain paused, while someone pried free a hidden cache of cinders glowing green at the core. Voices trembled the single word, wildfire, and buckets of river water hissed across the embers before the line resumed. Jon limped among them with sleeves rolled, face streaked gray. He could feel each bruise like a throb of the city's own pulse beneath his skin, but he lifted beams alongside Baker's and Sellsworth's without a word. His right boot was stained black where an unseen nail had punched through the heel. The pain reminded him he was still alive. In a lull, he cupped water at a cracked fountain whose marble dragons now drooled sludge. The water was gritty, but thirst drowned squeamishness. When he glanced up, dozens of eyes followed him. Eyes once wary, now merely exhausted. A girl no older than 10, hair matted with ash, offered him a strip of hard bread. He thanked her in a whisper, tore off half, and returned the rest. She scurried away before he could ask her name. At the west arch of the yard, Daenerys stood with Missandei and Sam, beside a folding table commandeered from the royal kitchens. Parchment lists blanketed the surface, held down by broken candlesticks. Sam moved a quill from line to line, recording each head of household and the tally of loaves, blankets, and medicinal drafts they received. Nisande translated numbers into High Valyrian for unsullied lieutenants, dispatching supply runners. Only Daenerys remained idle enough to watch the sky where Drogon and Rhaegal circled, sweeping the quartered city with slow, predatory calm. Jon made for her, weaving between horse-drawn carts loaded with rubble. When she saw him, she opened her arms wordlessly, cheek brushing the soot on his tunic. He felt the quiver in her shoulders, not from fear but from the sheer weight of holding herself upright, while thousands leaned their hope against her. "How many injured?" he asked over her crown of silver hair. "Fewer by far than feared," Sam answered, eyes still fixed on his list. The old pyromancers had sealed their caches in copper-lined vaults. Yesterday's blast vented out the roof instead of down the passages. He swallowed. Luck, or divine mercy? Perhaps both. Daenerys pulled back. Dark smears shadowed the delicate skin beneath her eyes. She had not slept. "Tyrion says Cersei fled before the bells," she said. "She and the mountain vanished into the warrens. If there are more caches, they might hold her between us and ruin." One of the unsullied captains approached, fist to breast. "The smith asks for audience." Daenerys inclined her head. "Send him." Gendry arrived a moment later, wiping grime on his leather apron. 8 scorpions recovered intact," he reported. "I've melted 3 already, turning the arms into nails for new shutters." Daenerys arched a brow. "How poetic." "Waste not," Gendry said with a shrug. "The Iron Bank sent scribes at sunrise asking after war bonds. I told them their ledgers burnt with the throne room." He grinned when Jon snorted. "Thought you'd approve." Jon sobered. "They'll return." "Let them," Daenerys murmured. "We pay in rebuilding, not gold." She flicked a glance northward, where smoke still coiled above Flea Bottom. "Where is Lyanna?" "In the Septi ruins with Gilly," Sam answered. Quiet as dawn. His smile faded to worry. But dragons circled low over the ruins of the Street of Sisters. Some folk panic at the shadow. "They will learn the dragons guard them now," Daenerys said. "But perhaps they should see something gentler." She looked to Jon. "Take Rhaegal next pass. Let people watch him fold wings. Children trust what stoops to their height." Jon hesitated, then nodded. "I'll fly after noon." He squeezed her hand and stepped away. The broad staircase that once led to the throne room now ended in a tumble of marble blocks, charred at the edges. Beyond, the ruined great hall gaped to open air. Jon climbed, boots scraping rubble. Inside, the Iron Throne hunched upon a dais of fractured stone, half its barbed points torn away. The silhouette no longer a crown but a carcass. Morning light spilled through the ragged hole in the western wall, catching motes that swirled around the throne like sparks before dying. Jon gazed a long moment, searching for some spark of reverence the legends had promised. He felt none, only the chill of memory. Then he turned and descended into the crypt passages. Torchlight flickered off damp stone. Somewhere water dripped steadily. He reached a door hewn of cedar, once polished bright, but now dull from neglect. Inside waited Sansa Stark, hair woven in a simple northern braid, cloak of dark blue wool lined with fox fur. She had arrived by riverboat after dawn, the first of Winterfell's envoys. Arya stood at her side, hands clasped loosely behind her back, boots caked in fresh mud from the city streets. Their faces mirrored each other's fatigue in different ways. Sansa's composed, Arya's watchful. Jon stepped inside. Arya offered a quick half-smile. Sansa moved nearer, assessing the bruises beneath his unshaven jaw, the rent in his sleeve, and the limp he tried to hide. "No crown fits one who labors," she said softly, and embraced him. He held her longer than he intended, aching for the smell of Winterfell's kitchens in her hair. When they parted, Arya clasped his arm. "Cersei's ghost scuttles under every rock," she said. "Rats carry her scent. We'll find her." Sansa surveyed the small chamber. A single wooden table bore maps of Westeros weighted with shards of tempered glass, scavenged from the destroyed windows. The realm will demand answers soon, she said. Who sits? What laws? Who pays for bread? She drew breath. Do you claim the throne? Jon had imagined this question would rise like a wave. Now, it struck cold. He met her eyes. No throne, no crown. Not for me. She studied him. The corners of her weary mouth hinted at relief and regret tangled so tight they might never be teased apart. Daenerys? Not in its old shape, he said. We break the chair. We break the chain. Sansa touched a shard of glass, turning it. Dawn scattered rainbows across the map. You speak in riddles. Arya's gaze sharpened. He means council. Jon nodded. A council from every kingdom, chosen by those who bleed for them. A ruler may still rise, but not by fire and blade alone. Sansa exhaled. The North bent once for Aegon's dragons and suffered centuries. It will not bend again. Jon felt the old pull. Duty to family, duty to realm. Nor must it, he said. The North may stand apart if its heart is peace. He glanced at Arya, silent sentinel, but not in war with the rest. Sansa lifted chin. We ask recognition. You shall have it, came Daenerys' voice from the doorway. She stepped inside, cloak swirling ash that lingered on her boots. If the North keeps roads open and grain flowing north and south, walls protect borders, not choke lifelines. Sansa faced her, blue-gray eyes steady. So long as dragonfire never sweeps over the neck again, we share our harvest. Agreed, Daenerys said. My dragons burn only threats. She looked at Jon. And warp only scorpions to nails. Arya's lip twitched. A fair exchange. Hooves clattered in the courtyard then, echoing through high windows. Jon Royce entered behind Daenerys, followed by Edric Storm in Baratheon colors, and Prince Trystane Martell bearing a sun and spear banner. Others filtered after. Lady Shiren of House Tarth, Lord Garmund Hightower, Maester Ronald from Gulltown, and 2 shy representatives from the free cities who had come not as conquerors, but as creditors smelling the first hints of new trade. They crowded the chamber with hushed greetings, eyes flitting toward the broken throne visible through the archway like carrion in the distance. Tyrion arrived last, leaning on a walking stick more pompous than practical. Forgive the intrusion, he said. The world would like its future now. Thank you. Jon gestured to the table. Then gather. They formed a rough circle, not lords on carved chairs, but men and women on upturned crates. A smith's anvil, a cartwheel propped on edge. Dust motes drifted in the sunlight that spilled from the shattered roof. Jon glanced once at the missing high windows and the remnant of a dragon's wing etched into a soot-stained wall. He spoke without ceremony. We cannot weave new banners today, he began, nor mend every roof or fill every larder, but we can choose the shape of what rises here. He met each gaze. No single house will claim the world by right of steel. No child will fear the sky that guards it. The throne is broken because its purpose is broken. Tyrion cleared his throat. A grand preface. He tapped Cain. But scribes require titles in their rubrics. If not king, what then? Then? Daenerys lifted a slow hand. Protector, perhaps. Chosen by council to serve a term of years. Removed by council if fires blaze. Edric frowned. Kings are crowned by gods. Protectors rise on whispers. Storms and recalls whispers seldom hold in storms. Trystane countered. Gods may be silent, but people speak. Dorne will not bow again elsewise. Royce tugged his beard. The Vale would stomach a council if it seats the Eyrie seat as equal. The debate swelled. Words layered on words. Language fraying under weight of memory and fear. Jon listened until the tide threatened to break their fragile unity. Then he raised both palms, and surprising even himself, he laughed, soft at first, then louder, a clear sound in the ruination. Conversation faltered. No seat is equal to another, he said, because no two carry the same wounds. We can weigh them forever, or we can start mending. He gestured to the maps weighed by glass shards. Pick 7 to stand watch. 1 from each realm. They name a protector. That protector names a council to balance coin, grain, justice, and walls. After 7 years, they face these lords again, and stand or fall by what they've built. Then, Tyrion tapped frenetic rhythm on wood. A wheel with 7 spokes. Fitting. Daenerys studied the table. 7 for the faith, but Dorne holds the old gods of Royne. The north bows to its weirwoods. I would not chain them, Sansa said. Then call them simply 7 realms and let the gods speak through each voice. A hush followed. Tyrion turned to Trystane. Dorne? Dorne wishes son, Trystane answered. We will try shade for once. Royce grunted assent. Edric shrugged. Palms up. Lord Hightower murmured how Citadel tradition favored councils. The Free City scribes nodded eagerly. Smelling treaties. The shape of the room changed. Shoulders eased, breaths joined. They signed nothing that day. Instead, they rose one by one and left to speak with their captains and quartermasters. Barges floated upriver bearing news to encampments, to Winterfell, to Highgarden's new shoots. By evening the broken hall stood empty of noise, though echoes still clung like spiderwebs across the high stone. Jon returned to the camp as sunset painted the river violet. The Dothraki had built corral lines for their horses along the city's broken outer road, weaving grass mats for shelter. He found Kuhono there, feeding an apple to Rhaegal, who crouched, wings folded tight, tail coiling between charred posts. The dragon's eyes flicked golden fireflies in the half-light. Kuhono saluted. The sky sang blood this morning, he said in halting common. Then sang peace. The Khals ride uncertain on such songs. Jon nodded. Peace is unfamiliar. It will feel thin until we strengthen it. Strength. The Dothraki echoed and stroked Rhaegal's jaw. D. Dragons teach. Jon stepped to the beast and placed a hand on tough scale. Rhaegal rumbled. Approval or hunger, he couldn't say. He swung onto the broad back, settling between gauntlet ridges. The dragon crouched, then leapt, wings unfurling in a thunderclap. Air whipped tears from Jon's eyes as rooftops dropped away. He banked south toward the Market of the Moon, where hundreds gathered around makeshift soup cauldrons. Children pointed skyward, shrieks of delight cutting through the weary murmurs. Jon angled downward until Rhaegal's shadow rippled across cobbles. The dragon back beat once, stirring cloaks and ash, then settled onto his haunches with a resonant thud. At first silence held. Then a boy broke ranks, approaching with a crust of bread held aloft like an offering. Rhaegal sniffed, exhaled steam that fluttered the crust, but did not scorch. Jon slid down, landing with a grunt. He lowered his hood. No fire, he called. No fear. Mothers recognized him first, whispers tumbling. Wolf King, dragon's friend, the snow reborn. Jon ignored them, kneeling beside the boy to break off a piece of bread. For him, he said, pointing at the dragon. Rhaegal opened jaws. Jon tossed the morsel. It vanished, ridiculous in proportion, yet the dragon hummed pleasure. Laughter rippled outward. Jon lifted another scrap, offered to the boy. For you. Peace tastes better shared. The crowd eased forward. Soon trembling hands pressed wilted flowers at the dragon's claws. Candles lit before him like before a shrine. Rhaegal tolerated the fuss with regal boredom. Jon spoke little. Presence was message enough. When gulls began to weave overhead, he mounted again, leaving behind a marketplace whispering not of doom but of wonder. He circled the river once, saw longboats ferrying more refugees across to South Bank camps, then guided Rhaegal to the slope above the ruined dragon pit. Drogon perched on the cracked dome, wings mantled to warm in last sunlight. Between the two beasts, Daenerys sat astride a white horse, Lyanna slung against her chest. The child squealed when Jon alighted, batting stubby hands toward Rhaegal's snout. The dragon crooned, lowering his head until his nostrils brushed the tiny fingers. Wind-tangling silver hair, Daenerys laughed. A clear, uplifting note that made Jon's chest ache. Your mother once thought to chain dragons, he teased as he approached, brushing his knuckles under Lyanna's chin. Your father once wore chains. Let us vow you will know none." Daenerys extended a hand to steady him. Chains pass silently to whoever guards them. We break them aloud. She gazed toward the Red Keep silhouette. Tyrion says scribes propose naming the new council, the Assembly of Seven Flames. Jon raised a brow. 7 flames? Sounds like a festival cake. He thinks the people will find comfort in candles. Let them light 7 each voting day. She smiled at his grimace, then sobered. Sansa fears too many lords will clamor for their seat and drown us in talk. Talk beats swords, he replied. But we must sail it like any storm. He gestured to the shattered dragon pit underfoot. First we rebuild roofs before councils. Night settled violet across the bay. They rode back to camp together, dragons gliding overhead in loose guard pattern. Fires dotted the terrain where soldiers, refugees, and newly freed prisoners shared stews thick with lentils, rumor and relief. Jon and Daenerys dismounted near the healer's tent where Gilly cradled Lyanna, while Gendry checked a splint on a cobbler's wrist. Inside their own tent, Jon found a basin of warmed water and a coarse bar of soap scented faintly with lavender. The first scent not of war or flame he had inhaled in days. He scrubbed until the water turned sepia, then poured it outside where earth drank greedily. Daenerys entered. Entered Cersei, entered shedding cloak. Hair. He washed her shoulders while she held Lyanna. Then she washed his back, neither speaking until only the slick hush of water remained. They lay together after, the child between them, and traded stories of their first remembered birthdays. Daenerys' memory was of Illyrio's manse, a cold courtyard, and a fruit tart so sweet she cried when it was gone. Jon's was Bran dropping an apple pie and Ghost stealing half. They laughed softly, the tent walls holding those fragile histories, like delicate eggs. Later, when moonlight sliced through the canvas seam, Daenerys asked, "When Lyanna is grown, what nightmares will we have left her?" Jon stared at the canvas roof a long time. "We will have left her ours," he said. "That's burden enough. Her night fears should be her own." Daenerys traced a circle on the baby's small belly. "Then we have 7 years to teach the world new lullabies before our watch might pass." He covered her hand with his. "Longer perhaps, but 7 is a start." The days that followed blurred in their sameness of toil. Ships arrived downriver bearing lumber from Blackwater Rush sawmills and stone from the Crownlands quarries. Masons drew chalk lines across scorched avenues. Children padded behind, dropping seeds into cracks between flagstones. Sunflower, mint, the bright fuzz of wild strawberries saved from window boxes. Every afternoon, an assembly gathered in the ruined throne hall, hammering ratified clauses onto tablets. Grain allotments, debt forgiveness terms, safe conduct passes for Iron Bank caravans. By the 7th day, each realm's envoy had named its assembly speaker. A carpenter from White Harbor built a simple dais of pale pine near the shattered throne. On it, they placed not a crown but a bronze torch with 7 branches. At dusk the torch was lit, the flames pure white from salt wicks soaked in oil. People cheered at the novelty, light without swords. Cersei's whereabouts haunted every whisper. Search parties combed catacombs and sewers. More than once the mountain was reportedly sighted stalking alleys. Each rumor sharpened anxiety. On the 10th night, a band of Lannister deserters dumped 3 headless bodies at the old menagerie gate. Black marketeers killed for coin. Panic flared until Arya slit one deserter's purse, revealing forged Queen's marks, minted hours earlier. The would-be loyalists had printed false bounty orders. News spread that the mountain shadow had been used to extort food. Fear curdled to scorn. But Cersei herself remained phantom. When hope of capture began to wane, Tyrion proposed opening the cellars beneath the Great Sept to feed the poorest districts. Some protested looting holy vaults, yet sound reason prevailed. The Septi storerooms were unlocked. Barrels of pickled fish, jars of olives, and dusty amphorae of Dornish red rolled into broken streets. On the 14th morning, the Septa who had sheltered Lyanna returned with fresh swaddling, made from altar linens, insisting each thread carried prayer. Daenerys accepted with tears unshed. Around that time news came north from Winterfell. Sansa scribes counted grain stores still healthy after a bountiful harvest, and the North would send 30 carts south along the King's Road as symbol of peace. Jon felt a knot loosen he hadn't known bound his lungs. But fragile peace never sleeps. On the 17th night, a fire erupted in a riverside warehouse storing confiscated wildfire flasks. Flames licked sky orange-green, painting the city walls with eerie glow. Alarms clattered. Jon dashed barefoot from his tent. Heart-hammering déjà vu. He and Grey Worm led bucket lines while Drogon strafed low, beating wings to smother flames by starving them of air. It worked. Mostly. The warehouse collapsed inwards, burying the last of its contents. In the smoking ruins they found no sabotage traces, only a lantern toppled by a hungry rat. Fate still toyed with them. After dawn, Daenerys convened the assembly in the open air for the first time. Sunlight spilled across rubble piles now ringed by scaffolds. She addressed lords and commons, voice hoarse from smoke, child held high. This city burned when ego outweighed mercy. She declared. Wildfire sleeps still in her veins, but so does water, so does seed. We decide today which will rise tomorrow. She paused, gaze sweeping faces braced on every word. We choose water. The crowd roared approval, a wave that broke upon the half-standing walls, then rolled down the streets. Jon, standing behind her, felt the vibration underfoot. He wondered if some distant clock had started, counting down years until hope flagged and someone sharper saw chance in chaos. But he also felt pride, bright and fierce, like a sword kept polished even while sheathed. That evening, in the hush after the bustle, a red priestess arrived at the camp's edge with a handful of acolytes. She insisted the Lord of Light had guided dragons to purge shadows. Jon stiffened, memory of flames and snow colliding in his skull. Daenerys met the priestess at the cordon, thanked her for prayers, and politely denied any further need for fire sermons. The priestess departed, leaving a ruby pendant on the post as gift or warning. Around this time, Edric Storm traveled to Storm's End to secure its loyalty to the council. Gendry went with him. He returned carrying edicts that named him legitimized as Baratheon. Edric's choose, he claimed, for Edric intended to join the assembly not as bastard but as Stormlord. Gendry choked when he told Jon, torn between honor to forge and duty to name. Jon clapped his shoulder. Both shapes fit in one hand, he said. Steel and storm. Gendry resumed smelting scorpion arms into door hinges with new vigor. As the second moon since victory waxed, refugees began drifting back across the river. Drawn by rumors of free seed and unclaimed plots, they erected reed-roofed huts on fire-cleared lots, hammering repurposed scorpion beams into fence posts. Sam organized scribes to record each new homestead, staking boards painted with the torch and seven sigil. The city breathed again, air thick with sawdust and stew smoke rather than ash. One afternoon, a squad of Unsullied escorted a prisoner through the half-rebuilt gates. Chains rattled around wrists. Small enough Jon assumed a youth, until the hood lifted to reveal Cersei Lannister, pale, gaunt, eyes sunken, yet still burning venom. The mountain nowhere in sight. Rumor later held he had been crushed by a falling arch while shielding her flight. A legend perhaps woven by Cersei herself. The queen who had ruled 1,000,000 souls now stood in rags, hair hacked uneven to disguise her. A murmur rippled through workers, stones lifted ready yet none thrown. Daenerys stepped from scaffolding, Lyanna on her hip, and faced her adversary across dusty yard. Cersei's gaze flicked to the babe, narrowed like a blade seeking sheath. Is this the latest usurper? This is the world you denied. Daenerys answered. It survived. Cersei laughed, a choked bark. It survived because you needed it to adore you. No, Jon cut in, voice calm but cold. It survived because enough people refused to burn it for thrones. Tyrion arrived, eyes pools of hurt. Sister, he said almost softly. Cersei's sneer withered. Maybe she saw the broken hall behind them, the demolished throne. Maybe she saw nothing left worthy of words. She turned away. Daenerys signaled. Unsullied led the prisoner to a canvas cell outside the walls. Visible from every rising street, a cage of justice, not of spectacle. No chance, no rotten fruit, only silent watchers. The assembly convened that night under torch branches. They debated her fate until stars paled. Some clamored for execution. Others, especially from Riverlands, wanted blood prices repaid. Jon spoke last. "Death ends debt unpaid," he said. "Let her live to build what she broke." They logged the vote. Labor of years in the ruins she made, guarded yet unchained. Cersei heard the verdict at dawn. Her laugh echoed across the half-mended courtyards like shards of glass in a tumbler. Seasons turned in quick measure when each day carried 100 tasks. Spring's first buds unfurled on charred plane trees along the street of silk, their bark black and silver like dragon hide. Children chased each other beneath, kicking cloth balls sewn from sail scraps. The assembly set levees to dredge the Blackwater. Fishermen reported sturgeon returning by midsummer. Roads reopened. The King's Road thrummed with wagons laden in northern pine and river-run trout. The rose-red bloomed again beneath Baratheon banners of black and gold, newly stitched. Jon rode often, overseeing border markers, mediating disputes where old grudges refused to sleep. Giants of paperwork threatened to drown him. He envied Sam's joy in parchments, but being astride a horse in wind or astride Rhaegal in clouds restored him. Lyanna Alisand's first tooth emerged the week the first new roof tile went atop the sept of Baelor's replacement chapel. She bit Jon's finger and shrieked with delight. He carried her through the rebuilt orphanage, letting toddlers tug her toes. She learned to crawl in council chambers, scattering wax seals across floors. Lords learned quickly that speech must pause until the Queen's heir finished exploring. On the anniversary of the city's fall, they held a torchlit vigil in the new market square. 7,000 candles, one for each realm, gleamed in concentric rings around a basin of river water. Daenerys spoke of tears turned to stone foundations, of dragons that learned restraint, of wolves that learned warmth. Jon said nothing, only stood with Lyanna on his shoulders as the bells tolled. Not for surrender now, but for remembrance. That night, as fireworks streaked courtesy of Taroshi alchemists hoping for trade, Jon and Daenerys climbed a new walkway along Aegon's high hill. Below them the city glimmered. Patchwork of new clay roofs, gardens cut into old battlements, the river gate now crowned by a simple bronze torch. Drogon roosted on a half-sealed turret, tail curling like a black ribbon. Rhaegal circled lazy in the updrafts, casting fleeting eclipses over the torchbanks. Daenerys rested her head on Jon's shoulder. Tomorrow, the assembly names the first protector. Jon watched the slow revolve of Rhaegal's shadow over the rebuilt dragon pit. They will choose you. Royce claims the veil pushes your name. He smiled without mirth. I told them no. You could say yes. She turned, anxiety flickering. Stay beside me formally rather than by promise alone. He cupped her cheek. Promise forged in fires hotter than oath rings. I serve every seat by serving none. She searched his eyes, found stubborn peace there, and sighed. Then stand behind me when I kneel. He nodded, kissed her brow. Dawn's first glow found the assembly thronged. The 7 speakers approached the torch dais. Sansa stood for the north, pale fox fur gleaming. Trystane for Dorne, sunspear bright. Edric for Storm's End, velvet green. Hightower for the Reach. Royce for the Vale, Serge Blackwood for Riverlands. And Lady Shiren for the Crownlands, now free of Lannister ties. They spoke in turn, short, precise, praising rebuilds, lamenting dead, voicing hopes. Then came the vote, tokens of carved hardwood placed into a brass vessel. Sam shook the vessel, lifted each token, read the carved sigil. 5 dragons, 1 direwolf, 1 blank dotty. The courtyard held its breath. Sam's voice rang. Protector of the realms, chosen by assembly. Daenerys Stormborn, queen no more. Applause erupted. Some thunderous, Some tentative but unopposed. The blank token, Tyrion confessed later, belonged to Daenerys herself. She took no crown. She knelt. Sansa stepped forward, dipped a sprig of new-grown weirwood into clear water, and touched Daenerys' brow. Trystane followed with a cup of Dornish red spilled upon Daenerys' left palm. Blood for blood no longer shed. Each speaker added gesture. Grain, salt, a sword hilt, touched then sheathed. A folded parchment seal. When all seven finished, flames on the torch tree flared higher. Not by wind but by oil poured from Gendry's foundry helms into hidden channels. Daenerys rose, eyes reflecting seven flames. She turned to face the square. Lyanna held by Missandei at edge of dais. The baby reached arms wide. Daenerys took her, lifted her high. The crowd roared so loud gulls exploded from every rooftop. Jon stepped to her side and laid a hand beneath the child's small feet, as though steadying the new world one heartbeat at a time. In the months that followed, titles mattered less than roads paved, less than taverns rebuilt, less than quills scratching new charters. Some lords grumbled that dragon wings loomed too large. Merchants complained torch and seven seals slowed trade license. One assassin reached Daenerys' chamber with a bottle of Myrish tears. Arya's shadow reached him first. Troubles persisted like ache in old wounds, but bone knit beneath. As autumn lights dimmed, Jon rode north with a column escorting grain to Winterfell before snows. At the King's Road fork he lingered, looking back toward distant haze of King's Landing. Rhaegal soared overhead, circling once before banking south. The dragon belonged now to skies guarding caravans, not to thrones. Jon lifted hand in farewell, then urged his horse north. He found Winterfell's walls garlanded with late-blooming frost flowers. Sansa had coaxed from heated beds. Ghost met him at the gate, grayer around muzzle yet eyes bright. Jon knelt into thick fur. That night he dined with Sansa and Bran, who spoke seldom but smiled faintly when Jon recounted dragons perched on broken towers. The north felt slower now, rhythms older than any hall of power. He slept under a roof smelling of pine pitch and distant hearth smoke, dreamless for the first time in years. Spring returned. He ventured again south, then east to Gulltown, to Duskendale, guiding mediators, settling border spats, always returning to King's Landing where Daenerys and Lyanna waited. The girl toddled by then, chasing Rhaegal's shadow and calling him Ra. She kept a wooden direwolf carved by Unsullied in her fist, chewing on its snout whenever new faces bowed too low. Workers showed her the first apple tree planted in the old courtyard. She tasted the fruit and spat sour skin. And everyone laughed. 7 years slid by, counted in harvest ledgers, torch oil deliveries, and the slow regrowth of plane trees along the avenues. The torch and seven banner faded on the council's tower, only to be repainted each spring by volunteers who sang as they worked. The Iron Bank sent delegates annually, found payments steady if modest. They lent more, sniffing profit. Quills replaced swords on more hips than not. And when the 7-year assembly convened to measure its protector, they found Daenerys already standing aside, handing tokens to a cautious young lord from the Reach who trembled at the thought of dragons, yet dared to speak of windmills and paved canals. Jon watched from the gallery, gray finally in his beard, Lyanna Alisan at his side. She clapped when the new protector swore service. Her cheer echoed like chimes across the high ceiling, now glazed once more with stained glass. That evening, Jon and Daenerys climbed the fortified hill where the broken throne still lay under canvas. They lifted the shroud. Rust spotted the iron but vines wrapped softened edges. "Leave it," she said, brushing tendrils. "Let time finish what fire began." Jon slid an arm around her. "It has begun." Below, lanterns flickered along the market streets. Music drifted, strings, reeds, drums from distant summer islands, voices blending tongues. Drogon dozed on a nearby parapet, one eye half-lidded. Rhaegal chased bats above, playful. "Our nightmares lie quiet tonight," Daenerys murmured. "They will stir again," Jon answered. "But not alone." She leaned against him, gaze on the torchlit city. Somewhere within slept a child who would wake tomorrow, sure that dragons were as ordinary as sparrows, that torches burned in 3s and 7s for reasons adults and that her mother's laugh could still hush winds. Stars wheel, winters come. The world spins with or without thrones. Yet sometimes, after ruin, things grow not because destiny decrees, but because flawed hearts choose mending over breaking. On that hill, 2 such hearts listened to cicadas hum, to distant bells ring curfew, to the soft metallic rustle of ivy around rusted steel, and knew that for one night, at least, the wheel had paused its grinding long enough to let them breathe. And in that breath, a promise lived, not etched in prophecy nor sealed by crown, but carried instead in whispered stories traded along hearths. Of a wolf and a dragon who broke a chair when they built a cradle, of bells that told surrender only to toll again for dawn, and of a city that relearned to lift its eyes without fear of fire raining from sky. A promise small as a child's heartbeat, steady as a dragon's wingbeat, fragile as any dawn, yet strong enough, perhaps, to herald a new day.